Hello YouTube and welcome back to another Dare to Game video. Today we are going to be playing Medieval Dynasty and we're going to be going through 5 great or like my 5 favorite places to start a settlement in the game. So as I've said in various videos, the most important, or at least one of the most important things that you have to decide when you're starting out a game is where you want to build your settlement. And for that, there's a number of considerations. Obviously, for some people, the most important is just going to be how it looks. So there's certain idyllic sort of scenes in the game where it's better to build a house. For me, a big part is definitely how level is the ground and how hard is it to build there. Because, you know, I've in my first couple tries, I didn't get, perfect spots where it was real easy to build a well laid out and useful village. So it's definitely a good thing to keep in mind. And the third thing is resources. So obviously, to build a village, you're going to need a lot of wood. Sometimes you're going to need straw, so a lot of people get that from reeds. You need rocks, you need all sorts of stuff. And once you've built it there, you're going to need resources for doing what it is you do. So if you're going to have a farming settlement, you're going to need room for animals and room for crops. And if you're going to have a craftsman settlement or something where you're going to be, let's say you're going to be making clothes, but you're going to still need fields because you have to grow flax to do that. And you might still want to have animals so you can have sheep to get wool. Or let's say you want to build wooden things. You're going to need plenty of wood. Let's say you want to build tools. You want to be an iron worker. Well, you should probably be somewhere near a mine. So it's definitely important to think of all these things before you go. But with all that in mind, I've picked out 5 spots that I think are definitely really, really good places to start off with. So let's start it off. Oh, and these are in no particular order. So let's start it off with the first one that I think a lot of people might have an instinct to go with, and it's not a bad one. So the first spot I have is right here. Now, mind you, when I say right here, I mean on top of this spot. I mean clear-cutting this entire circle here and building it right here in the woods. And the reason I say that is because this is the UNSTUCK location. So if you build your village right here, you can teleport straight back to your village at any time. Definitely a useful thing. The reason I say it kind of has to be here is because I've scouted through these woods, and there are not many flat areas where you're going to actually be able to build a village. You cut down this right in here, and you've got some room to build one. Down in around in here isn't too bad for flatness. It has a lot of advantages in this area. If you're trying to find stones, especially early in the game, this spot on the map, right here, is one of the best spots for gathering stones off the ground. Basically, they're just all over the place. Second of all, sticks. You're in the forest. Sticks are very easy to come by. You've got birch branches all over the place. Birch, maple, pine. You've got sticks all over the ground. You're never going to have a problem with that. And for logs, you're literally standing in the middle of a forest. So there's tons of logs. Later in the game, you've got a lot of mineable rocks all around. So that's going to give you a decent supply of rocks and limestone. You're not very far from a water source. There's creeks down here. Mind you, I've tried building down by the creeks, and it's basically impossible there because it's just way too steep. The only negative... and you're pretty close to these mountains here, so you're going to be able to mine. You don't have to go very far to mine. It's not going to be right next door, but it's close enough. The only downside to this area is farmland. Now, you can basically put fields almost anywhere, as long as it's not on bare rock. But they produce better in certain areas. The better areas for farming are going to be your more obvious field land. Whereas here, you're going to get a lower yield to your crops, even if you're using manure regularly. But this is, like I said, the most convenient spot to build one for the simple fact, well, 2 simple facts. A, you can teleport back to it, which, like I said, cannot be overstated how convenient that is. And B, you do need a lot of wood to build a city or village or whatever you want to call it, and this place has tons of wood. You cannot deplete it fast enough. By the time you cut all the trees down in this area, they'll be growing back because they grow back in a cycle, 1 time through. Or maybe it's 2 times through. But anyway, they grow back pretty quick. So this is definitely a good spot. An additional advantage of here that I forgot to mention is being in the forest here, you're actually quite close to 2 really good spots to hunt deer and bison. And also rabbits run around it quite a bit. So you've got a readily available supply of food, as well as tons of berries all over the place. So for beginners, this is a good spot to start out with only a few small flaws. So let's move on to the next spot. Alright, and so our next spot for building a village is right by this little lake. And now, to kind of talk about it, the first rule of thumb I have for a good spot to build a village, other than that last one that we did, because that one's an exception because it has the added advantage of being able to teleport to it. But my first rule of thumb is try to stick close to a body of water. Now that can be a river, it could be a creek at the very least, or it could be a lake. Now you see most of these cities are all clustered. These two are up in there, this one's kind of away from water, but most of the rest of them are pretty dang close to water bodies. And that's for a reason. There's a lot of good resources there. Obviously, you have a readily available water supply. There's fishing options. It's definitely a good rule of thumb. This lake is my favorite of the 3 unoccupied lakes. This lake here already has a town by it, and all the river and area for all this already has some towns by it. So this is a real good spot. So when we're talking resources, and I'll show you what it looks like when we get out, but this is a forested area, so there's plenty of trees. You're in this kind of mountain valley sort of thing, so you have readily available supplies of rocks and iron when you're going to need them. And in fact, there's a mine right about here. Yeah, there's a mine right about here, or a tunnel, I should say, where you can build, or a cave, that's what they're called, where you can build a mine. So that's definitely a good spot. It's within a few minutes run from here. But this here is the spot we're talking about. And if you've seen previous videos on my channel, you'll know that I actually have my current village at this spot. So I like this slope here, but really you could do it on any side, depending, you know, which direction you want to run in more often. If you build it over there, you're a little bit closer to the main town. But I like this spot because it's got a real gentle slope. You can build basically any buildings as you start to get up the hill, and it gets a little bit steeper. You can really only build the smaller ones unless you get a nice good area. But this is just a fantastic spot, an almost perfect spot to build a settlement. Plenty of wood, which again you're going to need because it takes a lot of wood to build a settlement. The rocks on the ground here are not as readily available as they were at the last place, but there are still plenty of them. I mean, you're looking around, you can see rocks. So it's a good place to start. There's no reeds, so if you want reeds, you got to bring them with you, or I should say straw, but that's not bad because straw is really light and you can carry a lot of it with you to start with. But there's plenty of wood, so if you want to start, you can start all of your buildings, or at least all your houses and stuff, right at level 2 and just build them straight out of wood. So you're not going to run out of resources here. As far as food goes, this, much like that last place, has a readily available gathering source. There's plenty of mushrooms in the woods up here, plenty of broadleaf plantain, plenty of St. John's wort, rabbits running around, there's deer, I mean you can see one right there. Over to the northwest here, there's 2 bison, or viscent, I think they're called in the game, that I think you can see one through the trees over there. Yeah, there's one right there that wander around over here. So getting meat in this area is definitely not a challenge, and the same goes for gathering food. Obviously, you've got water, so you've got a readily available source of drinking fluids. You can catch fish out of this lake, so you can either set net traps or spear them, or when you unlock it, you can build the fishing shack and then assign someone to it. So you can be generating fish that way. This is overall one of my favorite spots in the game. Out of all the places I've explored, I definitely really, really like this one. The farming scene over here is actually not too bad. This area gets plenty of sunlight, the soil's not bad, and once you've cleared it out, so you actually don't have trees all over the place, there's lots of areas, especially on the slopes up there, where you can put decent fields, decent sized fields that don't get in the way. My only recommendation here is, since it's out in the woods like this and slightly deceptive, you may be tempted to square your buildings off against the lake, but everything kind of goes at an angle about like this as far as the grids for like farming go, which I think I can show you. Okay, so if you look at the farming grids, you're going to want to build your fields first if you want to try and make I hate that. If you're going to make your town look consistent, if you don't want it to be all out of place, you're going to want to find out how the fields lie and then align your buildings with that. But that's all relatively simple. So that's this spot. Like I said, I really love it. But if you don't want to live next to a lake in the woods, this next spot might be a little bit better for you. So this next spot is right over here, as you can see where I'm standing. This one has a lot of advantages. It's definitely a top contender for a next build sort of idea for me. So as you can see, we're actually pretty close to these 2 towns, which is... It may seem like there's disadvantages, based on, I don't want to be that close to the next town over, but it's got way more advantages than disadvantages. you are within just a minute or two from running to either of these settlements. And that's going to make a difference when you're buying and selling and trying to get resources, doing missions, all that sort of stuff. So it's very convenient to be right here. But this spot, in and of itself, it may not look like anything special from the start, but oh, it is just a great spot. So you're right next to this great big portion of this river here. So, or lake system, I don't know what you'd call that, but I think you'd just call it a river. But so this is a great big lake here, and you're right here on the corner. Now, you could really go at any point along it. Like if you wanted to go over here, that's not a bad spot. There's all sorts of arguments to be made for that. But I like this spot the best. This is basically the perfect agricultural area. The soil over here is excellent. The farm yields are very, very good. You're right on the lake, so you've got all the advantages of being on that water source. The readily available water supply, the fishing options, the fertile soil, all of it. Most of this area has a gentle enough slope. Now, mind you, this here is pretty steep. So here I would either use this for a field or put like a barn up on top of it and kind of have it be a center place. Or maybe like your main house, have it be up here so it can be kind of the commanding point for the village. And then the way I would build here is I would have this road, the main road here, running straight through the middle of the village. So on either side, once I had walls built, it would open on either end, and that would be how you got through. Because my idea here is like an agricultural trading town sort of thing. You build the majority of your stuff down here on this flatlands, closer to the lake, because this is all nice and flat, and you can build a lot of stuff here. And everything else that anything else you build up here in this gentle slopey part. And like I said, you have your house up here, and then you have your wall go around it. So, like I said, biggest advantages here, super open land, lots of flat space so you can really put things where you want them. Soil's great for farming. As far as sort of cons go, the ease of building here is also a slight negative, but it's not too bad. So resource gathering can be a challenge, but there are plenty of trees on that side of you and plenty of trees across there, and you don't have to swim across or anything because there's a bridge right there. So wood gathering's not too bad, and with that goes sticks. Straw isn't too bad because you can just hop down to the nearest town and get it there, or there's a couple, I think just on, oh yeah, right there. See, some more straw over there. So getting straw is not too bad either. Rocks aren't so easy to get over here. If you want to get rocks, you either got to go back up into this area over here, or go over into the slightly more wooded areas in here if you want to find them readily available on the ground, or mine any deposits. So the rock gathering over here isn't ideal, but that's the sacrifice you make for all the rest of the advantages over here. This area does have clay. I think there's a spot right over there where you can get clay. As far as hunting goes, across the river here, there are readily available deer, foxes, rabbits, and boars that can be hunted rather easily. No buffaloes or bears, which means, you're not getting that big bulky animal all at once, so that's kind of a negative. But you also don't get attacked by any hostile predators, right here. And also this is not a very wolf-filled area, so you don't really get a lot of wolves coming into your settlement when you live over here. As far as gathering goes, there's plenty of St. John's wort around here. You'll get some mushroom growth, but not as much as you would in the woods, and plenty of broadleaf plantain. Not many berries, which is unfortunate if you're into that sort of thing. But once you get up into the woods that way, you can start finding berries again. So again, that's pretty close to these two towns. Right here on the narrow part of this lake is the third spot I really like building in this game. All right, and so my fourth spot is this little point right here. And now, this spot's kind of a fun role-playing spot, and I'll explain to you why. So, I really like being here because it kind of feels like you're in the center of all the action. Now, mind you, this is kind of your main trading people, and this is a good town down here, and this one's kind of a fishing village and stuff. So a lot of action comes up this way and everything. But here kind of feels like you're in the middle, because these are decent-sized towns here. A lot of resources you got to figure. So from a role-playing standpoint, if you wanted to kind of feel like you were trying to be the biggest business mogul, this is where the most roads cross. So this would be the best place to control. So it's kind of in what I would consider in real life like a floodplain. So I wouldn't feel super comfortable founding my city here in real life, but it's a nice spot role-playing wise or just in the game wise for a lot of reasons. You can see there's a lot of water. This is where the two kind of river areas meet. This big river system runs into the smaller stream over there. So you've got all the advantages that I try to go for in these. You've got the water there. You can drink the water, you can fish in the water, it makes your land fertile, all that good stuff. I would build it basically on the inside of this road. So it wouldn't be right up against it, or maybe a little bit, but probably not. Maybe just enough to build toll gates. But I would build it on this nice, wide open, flat ground here. This is basically as flat as you can get in the game. It's the flattest spot I've found yet. You've got more than enough room here to build yourself a nice large town and have some nice, flat, really fertile farmland. This stuff grows crops really well. I would probably put the farmland back there, fence it off, and have my town, like I said, up here with your walls running along this road on the front. Every once in a while, have a gate here, have a gate there, and then have a gate out the back to get towards your fields. But this is the perfect flat spot for building a really, really nice settlement and really good land for farming. So as far as resources go, this is a pretty good spot for wood. As you can see, there is a lot of wood in the area, like a really, really, really large amount, mostly birch. But so there's plenty of wood, and across you have even more. As far as rocks go, right here is not great for rocks, but you're not very far from the wooded hill lands over there where there's lots of rocks, and the same goes for in here. Once you start getting in the woods, you'll find plenty of rocks on the ground. And as far as mining and everything goes, this is going to be one of the areas where you don't have as much access to rocks sticking out of the ground. You'll find some here and there, but not many. Basically, you'll have to travel to over here, to this kind of hilly range, or over to this first small hill / mountain sort of thing by this other village to get yourself a good supply of rocks. So that is really the only downside here. So in this one, you'd probably have to get yourself to a level where you have an excavation camp. You've got people mining, rocks for you to get it. Some advantages, there's a lot of clay in this region. So once you get to the point where we're going to be using clay primarily for daub, I believe, this is a good area to be in for clay. With the logs, you obviously have the advantage of having sticks as well. As far as gathering goes, there's a lot of berries in this area. During the fall, you get quite a few varieties of mushrooms growing around here. Plenty of St. John's wort, plenty of broadleaf plantain. So none of those are an issue here. Really, the only resource here that you'll have to go looking for a lot of is rocks. Well, and iron, because it's not next to a cave. But, what are you going to do? Most of the good spots in the game are not next to a cave. So yeah, like I said, this one is a really good... I like to think of this one as kind of, if your character was really, really, really a savvy businessman, this is where you think he'd set up. It's pretty dang close to a couple different settlements. So this one's within a minute or two's running. This one's maybe just a little bit further, and this one's still pretty dang close. And you're also relatively close here. So as far as building a settlement at any one point in the game and being close to as many other settlements, I think this one, like I said, this is kind of the center of it all. Now, if you built it yourself right, like here or whatever, you're pretty close to all four of these ones. But this is a good centralized location. It's going to give you a lot of freedom to design your settlement as much as you want, because it's just nice and flat. So that's number 4. Let's move on to the last spot. All right, and so my final suggestion for today is kind of a weird one. It's an acquired taste. At first I wasn't sure about it, but then the more I thought about it, the more I kind of like it. So you're up here, it's really close to these two villages. So you got Branica and Baranica, so they're founded really close to each other. And we're right here, okay? So here's our water source. This is really the only water source in the area. I mean, there's more water over there, and if you go over here, but this is the closest one. But it's still close enough that that's well within walking distance, and it's still very convenient. So the thing about this spot, I mean, you can literally see that village, and up on the hill, I think you can see the first building of the next village at some point. I can't remember. I remember when I was first scouting it out that I found that. The thing about this spot is, as you can see, it has a cave. Most places where there are caves, now mind you, I haven't found all of them, so there might be a better one out there. If there is, let me know in the comments. But most places with a cave are like rocky, and you can't really do much else there. Whereas here, you've got good farmland, access to water, a cave, a decent supply of wood. It definitely could be better, but this is one of the areas where you're lacking a little bit more in wood, so you're going to need to go and bring wood from a little bit farther away. So that's really the only downside here is wood. If you can do this right here, you're going to have it's going to be one of the quickest ways to have access to a cave. So you're going to have lots of rocks, so you can build all your buildings out of rock, plenty of salt, so when you're preserving meat, you'll have all the salt you could ever want, and iron, so when you're going to start making your iron tools, you can have iron. Plus, this is a pretty big cave system, as you may or may not be able to tell. You know, I don't know how much experience you have in the game, but this is a big cave system, so it makes a good mine. And by building your village here, you're kind of like claiming it, so it kind of feels like you're stealing it from the other 2 villages. Now, one of the concerns that I initially had with this spot was, okay, well, you're really close to that village, can you build here? Well, I tested it out. So I brought enough resources with me to build a house. So let me show you how close you can get to that village before it stops letting you build. See, you can get all the way across the road here. It's not until you get here where you get too close to build it. So it's right about here. So that's pretty far away from the cave in this direction. Over here you've got obstacles and there's the river and stuff, so you can't build it there. But if you get my point, that's the closest village. So you've got all that far that you can go. You could build stuff up on the hill as room allows. You obviously can build all this sort of stuff over here, and then you can build stuff over this way. All along the road here, across the road. As long as the ground's not too uneven, you know, you've got plenty of room here. And so let's talk about some of the advantages. So it's kind of a weird location. You're right in between these two villages up here. But come on, let's talk about the advantages of that. Obviously, you're within spitting distance. This is about as close as any of mine have been so far to the nearest town. So you're definitely going to want to figure out ways to maximize your profit and everything to work with these guys. But if you've ever seen not the Lord of the Rings, The Hobbit, this kind of reminds me of the Lonely Mountain where the dwarves go, because you're claiming the cave in here, and so you got like Dale and then Lake Town, nice and close by. They're going to be wanting to buy your stuff, and you're going to be able to get stuff from them. So this area has adequate room for building. You'd have to be creative with how you do it. But it's got a really, really good source of valuable resources. You've got adequate farming land because you can really put a farm wherever you want. I mean, it could be up on top of this hill and you could have it up there. But there's enough room to build. You've got most of your important building resources. There's water close by. As far as hunting goes, well, hunting and fishing we'll talk about because I don't know if you can catch fish in this creek. It's pretty small. You might be able to with a fish trap, but I haven't seen any in there that I could spear. So I'm not 100% sure about that because, like I said, that's pretty small. It obviously offers the water that you need for drinking, but you're sacrificing your fishing ability. And as far as hunting goes, there's not really a whole lot of animals in this little area. Once you get over here more, you're going to run into quite a few animals. You know, you got to get more into the wild over here, though. This, in fact, is a really good hunting spot over here for deer. And over here for wolves. But so there's animals to be hunted, but not right in your general area. As far as gathering goes, you won't have any problems finding your regular things, your St. John's wort, your broadleaf plantain. There's a couple berry patches in the area, but so it's not as good for gathering, but it's a very good strategic location. And having, I think both of these villages each have 2 traders in them. So you're within range of about 4,000 coins when it comes time to try to make money. So, like I said, this spot's definitely a little bit more unique one, but being able to camp your town right on top of one of the biggest mines in the game is definitely a good asset. So that's my initial top 5 locations to build settlements. Some of them were based on how easy they are, some were based on resources, some were based on like how they look and a general balance. And some are just based on how like cool they'd be or a role-playing aspect. None of these are in any particular order. But yeah, that's my top 5. If you've got other recommendations or places that you really like in the game, I would love to hear about them. So why don't you go and tell me in the comment section. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. And I'll see you next time. Thanks for watching another Dare to Game video. If you liked this video, please leave a like and a comment. If you haven't already, be sure to subscribe to the channel. If you like my content and would like to support this channel, consider becoming a member today for as little as $1.99 a month. It makes a huge difference. But in any case, thanks for watching and have a nice day. I'll see you next time.